Hello, my name is Mark Branch, and I'm assistant wrestling coach at Oklahoma State University. Today in this tape, we're going to talk about match preparation. This tape is aimed at coaches and wrestlers, and it's going to try to help give some tips, some different drills and strategies that we can use to prepare for the big match. As a wrestler, you want to make sure that you peak at the right time. You want to make sure that you're ready for that big match. Some of you are peaking for a state tournament, maybe a national tournament, a freestyle tournament, a qualifying tournament. Depends on what your goals have been set to accomplish. But you want to make sure that you find that time that you want to peak and that you're in the best mental and physical condition that you can be in so that you reach your full potential. To me, wrestling is 90% mental. A lot of people, we'll talk about conditioning, technical drilling, things that you can learn, studying tapes. We're going to talk about all those things when we're preparing for a match. But wrestling is 90% mental. You have to have the mental edge on your opponent. It's one person versus one person out there on the mat. You're not going to get help from your team. You're not going to get help from your coach. Once you step onto that mat, it's one against one, and you have to be able to physically out-wrestle your opponent. Condition, where is very, very important. But the main thing is to have that mental edge. You got to know you're going to win. You got to have confidence that you're going to win, and you got to have a game plan to go out there and get those things done. The best mental tool that we can use is confidence, and confidence comes from a lot of things. Confidence is going to stem from our work ethic. Okay, how hard have you trained? Have you done the right things in your life? Are you managing your life correctly? Confidence is going to come from knowing that you've done the things that are required to get you to your goals, to make sure that you reach your goals. If I haven't been training hard, if I haven't been drilling hard, if I haven't been putting in any extra effort, if I haven't studied films, if I haven't been in the weight room, if I know in my mind that I haven't been working my hardest and that I've been leaving a little bit behind, then I'm not going to have confidence when I step out on the mat. So what we want to do is try to cater to that confidence. And the way that we do that is just in our actions. Okay, confidence comes from actions. We have to know when we step on the mat that I've done everything possible. I've worked myself in the room to get better. Okay, I've made an effort to learn technically, to get better in my technique. A lot of people want to talk about potential, what kind of potential a wrestler has, and potential is very important in wrestling. I've seen great athletes that had all the potential in the world, and they've went out and have accomplished great things. But I've seen the same type of athletes who've had great potential go off onto the wrong path and really not ever reach that potential. They've never attained their goals. I've seen a lot of people that didn't have a lot of athletic ability, didn't have a lot of wrestling skills, didn't have that natural ability going for them, that have accomplished great things because of their work ethic and because of their confidence, because of their mental state of mind. They had the mental edge when they walked out there. And that's something that you need to really keep in mind as a coach and as a wrestler. More as a coach than anything is noticing those wrestlers' potential. Are they going to be able to reach their potential, or are they going to fall short of it? And a lot of that has to do with things that I'm talking about with your work ethic in the wrestling room. I've seen guys that could out-wrestle anybody in the room. They just had more ability than anybody, but it was easy. It came easy for them, and I think that when that happens, a lot of times they take it for granted and they don't push themselves to the next level. And what happens is they end up falling back a little bit. At the same time, I've seen guys that really had trouble keeping up with anybody in the room, and they knew that had to make them work that much harder. So they pushed themselves harder than anybody else in the room, and that's how you go above your potential. I like to talk about potential a lot in match preparation. And just in your training too, because it's very important to really pay attention to these factors. If a kid's falling short of his potential, there's usually a reason for that. And a lot of it happens right here in the wrestling room. And if you can go back to the wrestling room and pick those athletes out, and tailor to their individual needs, then you're going to have a better chance to build a successful wrestler. Now, when we look at match preparation, we look at our season that's coming up. We want to make sure, like I said, to set goals. Okay, that's the number one thing to do, is you've got to set goals so that you have something to work towards. Now, that doesn't mean that your goals can't change during the year. A lot of people are going to maybe set a goal to make the starting lineup. And you may make the starting lineup the first month into the season. Well, that doesn't mean that you're done. You know, that's a time to alter your goals, and goals should constantly be altered. As you reach, and maybe you want to set your goals a little bit higher. And for the same account, maybe you've overthought things, and your goal is to be a state champion, and maybe you need to lower your goals a little bit if you're not making the team, so that you can really focus on what you want to get accomplished. So then, you know, a very important thing in match preparation, in your season preparation, in your training, is going to be setting those goals, but not necessarily sticking to them, altering them, you know, raising that level of expectation, maybe lowering that level of expectation. Those are the things that are going to help you get there, okay? And you can't really be stubborn when it comes to goal setting. First thing I really like to talk about is just diet, okay, managing our weight. Now, for probably most wrestlers, that means watching my weight, probably losing weight. And it's very important right now to be safe and to do it effectively so that you can have your best performance physically. And that means everything from eating the right things, eating at the right times. I know a lot of guys that maybe work out 2 or 3 times a day. Sometimes they get home late at night and they go and eat a meal at 10 o'clock at night and then go to bed. And that's something that can really hurt you. You don't want to eat right before you go to bed. You want to make sure you eat an early dinner so that your metabolism has time to really break that food down and break down the fats and get it into your system so that you're not just laying there all night sleeping and that food's turning to fat. You know, you want to make sure that you're burning some of that off. So, you know, things like that are very important in the sport of wrestling. You want to make sure you're eating the right things. If I'm trying to gain weight, and that's usually in rare instances, but a lot of wrestlers are trying to gain weight and gain strength, and especially as the season goes on. Towards the end of the season, you've been training, you're doing 2 or 3 practices a day, you're running, you're lifting, you're drilling, your body's starting to get torn down a little bit, and you'll start noticing your weight's tapering off. And it's kind of a concern. You don't want to be too light for your competition. So in some instances, you're trying to gain weight. And so it's important that you're eating the right things. You can consult a nutritionist to maybe look at your specific needs. You may want to eat a lot of protein and change your weight, your lift and weight system so that you're gaining muscle mass during the season. Like I said, though, most wrestlers, it's going to be managing our weight, watching our fat intake, making sure that we're eating the right things that are going to help us, carbohydrates. We want to make sure and stay away from the simple sugars. Make sure that we're putting a lot of fluids in our system. You don't want to get dehydrated, especially as you get closer to that competition. You know, as you're starting to tape your weight down, your body's going to become dehydrated, and those are the things that are really going to affect you in the second and third periods of your match. Nowadays, if you want to be successful at the high school level or at the collegiate level or at the international level, you're going to have to dedicate pretty much 12 months to the sport. Now, that means different things to different individuals. I think the key is making sure that you're staying active 12 months around the clock. And now some people, that means training hard for all year round, in the wrestling room, every week, drilling, live wrestling, lifting weights, running, all the things. For others, it means maybe coming in during the off season and lifting weights, having a good lifting schedule if that's something that you want to focus on. Conditioning is very important. You know, a lot of people just want to stay in pretty good shape year round. Maybe they just want to come in and technically work on some different ideas, work on some different skills. So technically, maybe during the off season, 2 or 3 days a week, come in and focus on those skills, focus on technique, focus on getting better. All right, so each individual is going to be a little bit different, but the key is to treat it as a year-round sport and making sure that you're working on a 12-month schedule. You don't have time to take 2 or 3 months off. You don't have time to kind of lower your guard because people are going to pass you up nowadays. And so to be that successful wrestler, you got to set goals. You know, every individual has to set goals. And if you set those goals, you got to find a way to reach them, and that usually means working around the clock. You also want to make sure that leading up to a competition that you're taking care of any injuries and taking care of soreness. Make sure that you're stretching well before practice and after practice. Make sure that if you have any injuries that you're treating them properly. You know, seeing a doctor, seeing a trainer, getting ice, getting your body taped up. Being preventative in a lot of your things. Sometimes it's easy to get caught up in the season, and you may have a sore back or a sore leg, a sore ankle, and sometimes you kind of you don't want to take the time to treat those injuries. You don't want to take time to maybe tape an ankle up before practice, and those things can also cost you in preparing for your matches, and they can cost you in a big match. Towards the end of the year, things are going to compile and they're going to get worse. And if you don't get a hold of it, it's going to get away from you and really affect the way that you can wrestle. So, you know, make sure and don't take it for granted that you're going to bounce back. Make sure that you're going there and seeing a trainer, treating things. Like I said, the best thing to do for just soreness is stretching out. I want to make sure, and you know, as our college team, we're going to stretch out for 10 or 15 minutes before practice. That's in addition to our warm-up, to our drill, to everything else. We're just going to spend 15 minutes stretching. And then after practice also is the best time. After you do any kind of conditioning, after you lift weights, those muscles are going to be tight. Everything's going to get tight. So it's important then to get a good stretch, get with a partner, and also look for help from one of your teammates to help you stretch also. One thing that I like to do is what we call buddy stretching. That's taking an opponent or taking one of our teammates and utilizing each other as partners so that we can get a good stretch in. We'll cover a couple of stretches that we like to do to stretch the chest and the shoulders. Okay, your opponent stand behind, and we're going to bring the arms back. Okay, pull the arms together slowly. Okay, I don't want to force them together, but I just want to make sure and I stretch my opponent out. Some people are more flexible than others. Okay, after he's stretched, okay, a little bit, we're going to kind of keep pressure forward. Now, one good way is to pick a number. Pick 10. I think 10 is probably a good number. 8 or 10 seconds that you're going to do this. And I can count them out loud. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, now he's going to stretch me. Same thing, 8 seconds. Okay, some other stretches that we can do. All right, stretching my opponent's neck here. Again, working both sides of the arm. I'll come with a half Nelson, okay, and pull the head down. Stretching the shoulder up. 1, 2, 3. Okay, exactly like that. Go to the other side. Okay, count to 8 also. Stretching that shoulder, stretching his neck out. Okay, now have my opponent go to the mat to a setting position. Okay, he's going to spread his legs here. He's going to pick a leg. Okay, first thing we're going to do, I'm going to lean over, apply pressure to his back. Now, if he's stretching, okay, himself, and this is without a buddy, he's going to have to try to pull himself down to that leg. All right, you're not going to get as effective a stretch as if somebody's applying pressure here. Now, he can relax these muscles as I apply pressure. 1, 2, 3, okay, all the way to 8 or 10. Okay, other leg. Okay, same thing. 1, 2, to the middle, right here. Pressure. Okay, allow him to relax and feel that stretch in his back. Another stretch that I like to use with buddy stretching, okay, is a Turk stretch here. That's going to help stretch my opponent's thigh, okay, hip. What I'm going to do is come back, capture his ankle, and I'm going to take it up, and then I'm going to set down on his back a little bit and stretch that thigh out. I'm going to put a little bit of weight here. Now, I'm not going to drive this over his back. I'm not trying to hurt his back here. What I'm trying to do is stretch his leg out, stretch his thigh out. So I set back on it, count to 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now I can do the other one. Okay, bent leg Turk here is the stretch that we're doing. 1, 2, 3. All right, so From here, I can also come back, catch my opponent's arms. This is a very similar stretch to what we did on our feet, okay? It's going to be in a couple different areas. But right here, I'm going to take it, instead of pulling it to his back, I'm going to take it forward a little bit. I never want to force anything. You've got to be a good partner here. You know, if he's putting you in an uncomfortable position, then you need to tell him that. I want to take my arms a little bit forward, okay? Again, helping your buddy stretch out. Okay, a butterfly stretch. Again, this is going to be a lot more effective if you have somebody helping you. It's hard to stretch these hips out just by pushing pressure down because you're tense and you don't really have the right area to push here. So your partner can really help by placing his hands on your legs and then slowly pushing out. Okay, again, you know, counting to 10 right here. All right, also working my opponent's neck here. Okay, I can have him resist against me a little bit. Okay, stretching that head out. Another thing that we can do here, stretching out our hamstrings. Okay, I want to take my buddy, keep my foot here. All right, keeping that hip to the mat, keeping that leg to the mat. Then I want to drive. Okay, slowly put pressure forward as I count to 10. All right, keeping this leg straight. Stretching out that hamstring. Okay, now from here I can also stretch out this calf by taking the heel, taking the toe to the knee, okay, supporting the heel, stretching that calf out. It's important that you tailor your training regimen around your competition. If you have a big tournament coming up and you know you're going to wrestle 2 or 3 days in a row, okay, that's going to be a little bit different than if you just have a duel, just have one match to wrestle. But you want to make sure that you tailor your training around that. What I mean is it's important to kind of taper off your training as you get closer to competition. If I'm going to wrestle in a state tournament in 2 weeks and it's going to be on a weekend, then I'm going to have, you know, that first week of practice leading up to that is going to be pretty hard. I'm going to do a lot of live wrestling. I'm going to do a lot of drilling, okay, a lot of conditioning work. But then as that second week starts approaching, then I'm going to start tapering stuff off. You're probably not going to get in any better shape than you already are. You're probably not going to learn any more technique. So there's things that you can do to kind of help you prepare as you get closer to the competition. So what we want to do is taper it off. I don't want to be wrestling 2 20-minute goes a day before I have to go wrestle in the state tournament. I want to give my body sufficient time to rest. I want to feel good physically. And that's going to help you feel good mentally, too, if you know that your body feels good. If you're still sore and you're tired and you're run down when you're going into a competition, you're probably not going to have that great of a performance. So it's important what you're doing in the wrestling room. And one thing, you know, that I would say is everybody's going to be a little bit different. Some guys can train up until the day before of the competition. Some guys need 2 to 3 days to really recover from their training. A lot of guys train differently, too. A lot of guys are going to wear themselves out, and if you let them, they'll probably go all the way up and just, you know, they're training animals. They're going to go all the way through the competition and never rest. Sometimes you got to step in and say, you need that rest. You've done everything. You know, you've done the right things. You've done what you needed to do to get ready for a state tournament, a national tournament. You know, have confidence in that. Let's let your body rest. Let's let you recover so that you can go in there and have the best performance. And again, that means tapering off a little bit in practice. I don't want to be running sprints. I especially don't want to be in the weight room doing a lot of heavy lifting 2 or 3 or 4 days before competition. If I'm wrestling in 4 days, I don't want to be doing heavy lifting. I don't want to be doing going down and trying to max out my bench, max out my squats, because those things are really going to tear down your muscles, and it's going to take a lot of time to recover. So if I'm going to get a lift in 3 or 4 days before competition, I want to make sure it's real light. I want to make sure that it's an endurance lift. I want to make sure that it's lightweight, a lot of reps, maybe, you know, just something to kind of wake your muscles up. But especially 2 or 3 days before that competition, I don't want to be in that weight room. I don't want to be running sprints, okay, because sprints, things like that. Running stairs, running sprints, doing a lot of heavy leg work is going to tear your muscles down, okay, and you want to make sure that you're fresh. I've heard a lot of guys go to tournaments It may be the biggest tournament of the year. Didn't have the performance that they wanted, and they come back and say, my legs were killing me. I felt like they were very weak. Well, a lot of that is due to overtraining. So you don't want to get caught up with overtraining. You want to make sure that you're smart about it and that you do the right things to feel great when that competition comes. Okay, now what competition are we preparing for? Are we preparing for a duel? Are we preparing for a tournament? Is this the end of the year tournament? Is this the beginning of the year tournament? I mean, those things are all going to it really influence how we prepare for the competition. If I'm preparing for a duel, you know that you have one match that day or that evening. You're going to have one match, one competition. If you're going into a tournament, you know you'll have anywhere from maybe 4 to 8 or 10 matches, depending on how the tournament goes. But you can have very many matches, and so you want to make sure that you're doing the right things to warm up for these things, especially a tournament. Now, tournaments, for the most part, begin early in the morning. Your first match may be at 9 o'clock, maybe at 10 o'clock in the morning, maybe at 11 o'clock. Some of us aren't prepared to wrestle at 9 o'clock in the morning. A lot of us practice in the afternoons after school, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the afternoons, and our bodies aren't used to wrestling in the morning, so we want to make sure that we get a good warm-up and a proper warm-up. Okay, a proper warm-up is going to include a lot of different things for different individuals. I'm going to give you some ideas of things that we can do. First thing is use a lot of your routines that you use to warm up for practice. It may be a little bit different in length, they may be a little bit different in variety, but use kind of a general structure that you're used to, something that you're familiar with. If I come into practice and I start out by jogging, okay, then that's important to do that in preparation for a tournament. It's important to do the same routine, although it may change a little bit as far, like I said, in intensity, it may change in length, it may change in a variety of ways, but kind of stick to something that you're very familiar with. That's going to put you in a comfort zone. That's going to make you feel good and comfortable, kind of put you in a good mental state going into your competition. Things that I could suggest, things that we do before practice also, just getting a jog, getting a warm-up, getting a sweat going, breaking that sweat before you do anything else, okay? Making sure you may even throw a couple sprints in to help you break that sweat. I want to make sure that I get stretched out very good. If I have a buddy that I can use, then I want to do that. I want to get it with the buddy system, make sure that we get stretched out. Probably going to be my drilling buddy if I can have one. Hopefully at a duel or a tournament, you're going to have a partner that you can work with. And we'll talk about things that often occur when you don't have a partner. But if I have a partner, make sure that we stretch each other out very good. I also want to make sure to start out with a drill, working through some motion, on my feet, drilling some shots, okay? And we're not really trying to learn anything. We're not trying to correct any technique. All we're doing is getting our bodies warmed up for wrestling. And that means bending over, pulling my opponent's head. When my partner comes out for my drill, it's just like we drill in a practice. I want to make sure that we work on our setups, work on our motion, work on just setting our opponent up, hitting our shots, following through with our finishes. Everything's going to be the same. Now, also, some people like to live wrestle atop of their drill, and I think that's very important, especially for a tournament. Like I said, you're preparing for a match probably at a time that you're not used to, maybe in the morning when you're not used to wrestling live. So it's important when you drill to maybe get some live wrestling in. If not that, get some very intense drilling. Go a drill match. And a drill match is intense drilling where our opponent's letting you work on him, but at the same time, we're being very explosive. We're hitting our moves, finishing full circle, going as hard as we can without him resisting us, okay? Live wrestling, again, you want to be careful here. There's a little give and take when you're live wrestling pre-match. You don't want to do anything that could cause an injury. You don't want to twist an ankle, turn a knee. So it's not winner-take-all type wrestling. If you're going to live wrestle before a match, make sure that you're responsible. Make sure that your opponent's responsible. Make sure that you know your opponent. Okay, it's very important that if I go off to a tournament, I need to be careful about just picking some guy out of the tournament that I've maybe met or seen. If I don't know him and I don't know the way he wrestles and I'm not familiar with his movements and his actions, that's a risk that you're taking. I may go into that and he may hit a shot on me that I wasn't ready for, I wasn't expecting, I didn't see coming, something awkward, unorthodox. And I have a possibility of injuring myself right before competition, and that's something that you don't want to do. So it's good to have somebody that you're very familiar with. Like I said, somebody that you have a lot of trust in, because you want some give and take there. You want to make sure that if you get in a scrambled position and your knee possibly gets turned, he's not going to keep turning. He's going to, release the situation. You'll just come back up, because again, it's not winner take all here. We're just trying to get a good warm up. And the key to this, to live wrestling or to hard drilling, is to get your lungs burning, because I've seen a lot of people that will go out, that will that will jog, that will jump rope, that will drill, and they're sweating. They've got a good sweat, and they feel warm, okay? And then they go out into a tournament, and they step out on the mat. In that first period, they feel like they're going to die. Sometimes the first match. You've heard a lot of people at tournaments, and I'm sure you've had friends or people you've coached, kids that will say, that I don't know what it was. That first morning, I felt like I couldn't breathe. A lot of times they'll complain about the air being cold. The gym was cold. I couldn't breathe. My lungs were burning. Well, a lot of that has to do with their warm-up, because they didn't get that burn in the first place. So whatever you do, make sure that your lungs burn. Make sure that you're breathing heavy. Okay, make sure I kind of call it blowing out your cobwebs there. Even though you're in great shape and everything, you need to make sure you go in there and expand those lungs and get them really pumping, where you're breathing heavy and they're burning. Okay, what that's going to do is that's going to lead you into that first match, and you're going to have that first match out of the way, basically. That first match that everybody talks about, well, first match I felt horrible. I thought I was going to throw up. My lungs were burning. Well, that first match took place before the tournament began, okay, if you have a proper warm-up. And that second second match, which is actually your first match, is going to feel great for you. Now, if you're preparing for a duel rather than a tournament, it's going to be a little bit different. Again, you want to stick to something you're familiar with, and you want to go through a routine that's going to make you feel comfortable. But you realize that you only have one match. Okay, so it's important that you go out there and get a real good burn in. And I would almost always go some live wrestling before a duel. You're preparing for one match. After that match, it's over. You're going to go home. You're going to rest. You're not going to have 3, 4, 5, 6 more matches that day. So don't really hold anything back. I see very few people that do too much for a warm-up. Most people don't do enough, and that's the problem that they run into. They're scared of overdoing it, and that's completely understandable as an athlete. You don't want to go out there and wear yourself out before you actually go out there and wrestle. In most cases, you're not going to do that if you've trained right. If you're in good enough shape, and I'm sure most of you are, but in your practice routine throughout the week, sometimes you're wrestling 20, 30, 40 minutes a day in your live wrestling. You're in good enough shape to wrestle live for 30 minutes, to wrestle live for 20 minutes. Okay? Your match is going to be 6 or 7 minutes long. So what are you preparing for here? 6 or 7 minutes. What are your capabilities? They're a lot bigger than that. So don't hold back necessarily. But like I like to say, everybody's a little bit different. Some people are probably going to want to just have a light warm-up. And everybody's going to be a little bit different, and just make sure that you do what makes you feel best. And again, what puts you in a great mental state, because I want to go out there and feel good. I want to feel like I got a good warm-up in. I don't want to be questioning anything. Did I warm up enough? Did I warm up too much? If those things are going through your mind, then you're not doing the right routine, and it's going to show in your wrestling. Okay, now again, looking at the mental aspect of wrestling. Once I've got my warm-up in, it depends on when you're going to wrestle. If it's a duel, you usually have a good idea of when you're going to wrestle. It depends on what weight you are, what weight the duel starts with. You have a good idea well before the match when you're going to wrestle. So it's important to kind of start focusing mentally on what you're going to do to prepare for this match. Mentally, you want to have a game plan, or more of a strategy as to how you're going to wrestle that match. Now, this game plan and strategy may change if you know your opponent. You may alter it a little bit. But I've got to have a game plan. And what I mean is I'm not going to go out there and say, first thing I'm going to do is shoot a single leg. The first thing I'm going to do is just get in a square stance and throw underhooks. I'm not talking about a specific game plan. I'm talking about a strategy, a match strategy. Am I going to be the aggressor? Those are questions you need to have answered already. Having a game plan means when that whistle blows and I step on this line and the whistle blows, okay, what am I doing? Am I going to be the aggressor? Am I going to look to attack offensively? Am I going to be a little more conservative? You probably know what kind of wrestler you are. Everybody's a little bit different. But I got to know what I'm doing off the whistle. Am I going to go to him or am I going to let him to go to me? My personal preference is take the match to your opponent. I want to go to my opponent. I want to be aggressive. Okay? Whether that means pulling on his head, looking to attack, looking for a good setup, I got to have those things in mind. Okay? Don't be out there with no idea of what you're going to do with this guy. Like I said, we want to make sure he's worried about us. We're not worried about him. And our game plan stays the same. Now, another thing is I want to stick to that game plan. Okay? I may not expect to get taken down in the first period, and something may happen. I may take a bad shot. He may run around behind me. He may catch me off guard with something I didn't realize he had. If things like that happen, you cannot lose your mental focus. You cannot lose your head. You got to regain your focus and go back to your game plan. Okay? And that means if I get taken down unexpectedly, okay, my first thing that I want to focus on, I don't want to beat myself up. I don't want to think negative thoughts. I shouldn't have given that takedown up. All I want to do is focus on my game plan. And my game plan means that if I'm on bottom, what am I looking to do? Okay, I'm looking for an escape. I'm looking for a reversal. And that just goes, I mean, that should be everybody's game plan on bottom. So go into that game plan. Get into my feet, looking for an escape, looking for a reversal. Once I get the escape, okay, what's my game plan? Go right back to that game plan. I'm going back. I'm going to be aggressive. Okay, now I know what he's got. Now I know I need to set my shot up better. I'm going to be a little more aware of a tricky move he may have done, you know, to take me down. But the game plan stays the same, and I think it's important to stick to that game plan. And you're going to keep that game plan throughout your whole career. I see too many wrestlers that do not have a game plan, and they come out into the match. They get flustered easily. They don't have a very good attention span, and they don't keep their focus well. And those are all signs of not having a strategy and not having a game plan. So part of having confidence is when I come off the side of the bench and step onto the mat, shake my opponent's hand, I know what I'm doing up here. Okay, there's no doubt. Okay, I'm going after my opponent. I'm going to look to take him down. I'm going to ride him. I'm going to turn him. Maybe I'll cut him. You know, a lot of people want to take him down, cut him, take him down and cut him. That's their game plan, and that's something that you should stick to. All these things that make you feel comfortable inside, things that give you that mental edge. Now, a lot of other things that you can do to prepare for your match, a lot of general ideas that we want to keep in mind are things like watching films. Now, that may mean watching films on our opponent or watching our films. I hope every one of you have somebody filming your matches. Especially at the high school level, it's not going to be as easy to get films of your opponent sometimes. You may have never seen the guy you're wrestling compete, and that's just unfortunate, but if you have that opportunity, take advantage of it. Study what he does. Now, the key is to do this, you know, prior to your match. You don't want to come in the day before your match and watch your opponent wrestle and then try to, you know, it's a little bit too late to start worrying about what your opponent does. To be mentally strong, too, you want to have confidence in what you're doing, not really focus on what your opponent's doing. But it's very beneficial to get in that film room, watch your own films, look at the mistakes that you're making. This is early early before a competition, maybe a week to 10 days before you're wrestling in a tournament or a duel, so that you can work on some areas that you're having problems with. And a lot of that, I see a lot of it as maybe setups on our feet. You know, we drill a lot of things. We drill our shots. Sometimes we don't really focus on our setups. Sometimes we don't focus on our finishes. And those are the things that you really can pick out by watching films. You'll see them. You'll notice them. You can address them in the wrestling room. And then when you go out and compete, you know, you have those problems taken care of. Again, to be mentally strong, I want to stay positive. Don't beat yourself up. Don't ever think negative thoughts. Don't think about the possibility of losing. And I think that's very important when you're preparing for a match. Lose never comes into my mind. I don't think about losing. I think about winning. Think about what I'm gonna do to win. Okay, not what he's gonna do to possibly defeat me. That never, I don't think about those things. I want to make sure and tailor my thoughts positively into a nice mental focus, so that I'm thinking positive thoughts about winning, thinking about how I'm going to take him down, how I'm going to ride him. Again, all those things have to do with your game plan and sticking to that game. One thing that you need to prepare for is to finish your match very strongly. Okay, and what I mean is you see a lot of people come out like a ball of fire, and then third period they fade away. Okay, that's not going to lead you to a very successful career. You need to make sure that you can finish your match strongly, and that's the way you train. You need to train like that, and you need to make sure that in your competitions that's something you're thinking about, applying more pressure as the match goes on. Now, as you face tougher competition, and as you face you get into a state tournament or national tournament, as you get against the better opponents, okay, you're going to find out that the matches are going to be tight. Okay, it's going to be harder to score. It's going to be harder to set your opponent up for a takedown. It's going to be harder to turn your opponent. It's going to be especially hard to pin your opponent. It's going to be hard to escape from your opponent. I mean, things aren't going to come easy. So it's important that in that first period, when he's strong physically and he's probably strong mentally, that I stick to my guns and I stay in there, keep my game plan, keep my focus. But that third period, when often your opponent's going to be getting tired, when he's maybe mentally going to slip up, that's when you got to stay strong and you got to finish that match strong. Okay, and that means having a great third period. A classic example of a great wrestler is one who maybe in the first period is ahead 2-1 or 4-2 or 4-1. Okay, something like a very tight score. Second period, maybe they've extended their lead to 5 or 6 points. And third period, 8-10 to maybe possibly teching your opponent. That shows a very strong wrestler, because as that match goes on, they're getting stronger, their opponent's getting weaker, and that's when opportunities are going to come. Okay, when your opponent gets tired in that third period, when conditioning starts coming into effect, it's going to be a lot easier to set your opponent up. It's going to be a lot easier to turn your opponent. It's going to be a lot easier to pin your opponent. And so that third period needs to be your strongest period. You need to make sure and train for that. Okay, that third period is your strongest period, and you're going to be a champ. You also need to make sure that you wrestle through all phases of the match, and that means never relaxing. If you have a 6-minute match or a 7-minute match, depends on what level you're at, you need to make sure that for that 6 or 7 minutes that you're 100% focused and that you never let your guard down. Okay, I've seen too many people either get leads or are in a tight match and they slip up for 1 second. And wrestling is a matter of seconds, milliseconds. And sometimes if I'm wrestling a quality opponent and I relax for 1 second, he's going to pick up on that and strike, and it could cost me the match. For instance, at the Big 12 championships, I was in the lead, 6 or 7 point lead on my opponent, and going into the third period, I decided to relax and take a break. My opponent pinned me, cost me the match. So I had pretty much a for sure win going into the third period. But if you slip up, I've seen a lot of guys paid for it. I've paid for it. I've coached a lot of guys that have paid for it. It's important to keep your focus mentally throughout the entire match and through all phases of the match. Sometimes you get into some scrambles and some rolls. You can't let your guard down. You got to stick to your guns. You got to make sure that you keep your focus for 6 minutes, for 7 minutes of the match, and basically that's the way you need to train. You can't have mental lapses in your training. Something that you also ought to keep in mind is to make sure and treat every opponent the same, and that means not taking anybody for granted. You pretty much know who you're wrestling. Sometimes you've heard of them, you've heard of their accomplishments. You know it's going to be a tough match. You know it's going to be a battle, and you really prepare yourself for that. At the same time, there may be a guy that you don't respect, and you go out there, you take him lightly, and those things can also cost you. You don't ever see great wrestlers do that. And that's something that you need to keep in mind, is treat every opponent the same. Give them the same respect. Maybe they haven't won 3 state titles, but everybody's dangerous, and anybody can be beaten on any given day. So it's important that you treat everybody the same. Don't take anybody for granted. When you go out there, like I said, have that same game plan for everybody. Let them worry about you. Okay? And it doesn't matter if they're a junior national champion or if they're a second-year wrestler. I mean, it doesn't really matter. your game plan stays the same, and you give them the same respect. As you can see through all this match preparation that we've discussed today, the one thing you've noticed is that every athlete is going to be a little bit different. For coaches, that's kind of an unfortunate thing because you may be working with 20 kids. Everybody's going to be a little bit different. So it's important that you pay attention to those things, and maybe you do different things with different athletes to help them prepare mentally. Everybody doesn't prepare the same. Everybody's not going to warm up the same for a tournament. Everybody's not going to drill the same. And those are things that you need to make sure that's in the best interest of the athlete. Sometimes the athlete doesn't always know the best interest. There are many times it took me a good year to learn that I wasn't getting a good enough warm-up, that I felt like I was probably getting too much into my warm-up, and it took a coach to step in there and say, you're not getting enough, and it really changed my whole physical feelings during a match. I felt stronger. I felt in better condition because I was getting that stuff out of the way before the competition starts. So it's important as a coach to kind of recognize that your athletes are different and that their needs are going to be a little bit different. And preparing for the match, again, go back to your mental preparation. And that all stems, of course, all the physical things are involved in that. But mental preparation is the biggest thing that I can think of. And it can mean the difference between an average wrestler and a great wrestler. I went into an NCAA tournament with a losing record, but I just happened to have the right mental preparation that weekend. Going into a tournament, I had the right state of mind. My confidence was there. I had been training hard. Everything was coming together. I had corrected a lot of my mistakes. I was training with the right people. I knew I was getting the best workouts possible. I knew I was getting better workouts than anybody else in the country. So going into that tournament, although my record didn't say a whole lot, although my season hadn't gone very good, going into that tournament, I had my head high, and I had a game plan, and I had the right mental focus, and that was the key to winning a national championship. And I wouldn't have done it if my mental state of mind wouldn't have been there. And so, like I said, that's why I'm a firm believer that wrestling is 90% mental. Those are the things that you really need to focus on. Everybody out there should be training hard. If you've set goals and you've set attainable goals that are something that you're reaching for, you should be doing the right things physically. Okay, you should be in the weight room. You should be on the exercise bike. You should be doing conditioning, drilling, after practice conditioning. Those things everybody should be doing. Okay, some more than others. But the key to being successful is to mentally being focused, mentally being ready when you step out on the mat. I hope you've enjoyed this tape. I think that you can take something away from this to tailor to what your needs are as an individual athlete, as a coach, and I hope that you find success out on the wrestling mat. Good luck to you. Best wishes.